on Saturday Night Live, as the losing candidate often is. It works so well for Hillary. Let's run that back. And it just made me think, I'm sure every single member of the Saturday Night Live cast was a Harris supporter. But what if one of them wasn't? What if one of those cast members was for Trump? Would they have felt comfortable saying so? I really don't think so. They would have had to keep it to themselves. That's not a good place for us to be. I remember when, and that happens even now on the left.
Bill Maher isn't holding back. He's coming straight for the left-wing pundits who, let's be real, seem stuck in their own echo chamber. He's calling them out for doubling down on their mistakes, refusing to self-reflect, and acting like they've got it all figured out. And here's the kicker. He's saying their endless fixation on attacking Trump might actually be their biggest weakness. He's not sugarcoating anything, and he's urging a serious wake-up call. Could he be onto something? That's for you to decide. Now, let's dive into the details and see what's really going on. So jumping right in, Bill Maher isn't just giving us a laundry list of grievances against the left. No, he's really unpacking what's wrong with their response to Trump's presidency. See, Maher's arguing that they're just a little too obsessed. Not in the healthy critique kind of way, but with an almost melodramatic hysteria that, to be honest, often backfires.
Have to just respectfully disagree. I think if we've never presidential candidates talking about people getting shot in a.
Of course,
he called for a military tribunal against her.
Again,
he might not do it, but you don't want to normalize the notion that that's the kind of language. That's the kind of language that we want to have.
No, but that wasn't. But this is the problem with. I'm sorry, the far left, is that.
I'm not on the far left, but I don't think we should have presidential candidates
you're not
talking
going to
that
drag
way.
me into Trump derangement syndrome. It's not deranged to be upset and worried about the real things, like he could be a fascist. He wants to be. But if you're going to think I'm going to chase every rabbit down the hole for the next wait a second, for the next 4 years, you're wrong. I'm not going to.
I'm not telling you what to do for the next.
That's who he is. No, I'm just telling you. I did this once. I'm not going to do it again. That's who he is.
Okay.
If he talks about Arnold Palmer's dick, or he makes it, or he says a bad word, or says something that everybody thinks like there are shithole countries, I'm not going to lose my shit about it. I'm just not, because that is deranged.
Isn't it ironic? It's like they had one of the world's most impactful figures right there, but personal bias was too distracting.
And I remember when Elon Musk hosted, and this is well before he was a Trumper. This is 3 or 4 years. He was just the richest man in the world. And a number of the cast members on Saturday Night Live, they didn't want to deal with him. They didn't exactly boycott, but they made it plain. And I was thinking, really? You have Elon Musk on your show for a week. You could talk to one of the most interesting, brilliant people the world has ever produced. Even about this issue that bothers you so much, that he's so rich and lots of people aren't. But no, you don't want to even deal with him. That's what I hate about the left.
He's pointing out that, sure, some critique is fair game. We've all seen the controversial tweets, the unpredictable policies, right? But Maher's issue isn't with holding Trump accountable. It's more about how the left does it. The constant alarm bells, the over-the-top rhetoric, and how they don't stop to consider their own role in all this chaos. Instead of introspection, it's like they're doubling down, amplifying every single minor scandal, making everything seem like it's the end of democracy as we know it. But does that really help, or does it just alienate the very people they need to win over? Maher's betting on the latter. Let's think about, for instance, the media framing. Maher's saying that instead of being the cool-headed voices that many Americans need, left-wing pundits often act like they're auditioning for a soap opera. It's all drama, heightened emotions, but hey, where's the substance? That's a question he's repeatedly asking, while emphasizing how this approach just deepens divisions instead of uniting. And let's be real. When was the last time a hyperbolic monologue on late-night TV actually changed someone's mind? Exactly.
You're brats. You're brats and
Take the celebrity culture that seems to engulf political commentary on the left. Maher points out how, during Trump's presidency, late-night hosts, actors, and even musicians wanted to become political analysts overnight. It's like everyone wants their slice of the outrage pie. But what happens to serious political discussion? Basically, that stuff gets drowned out by noise, and Maher thinks it's a dangerous game. We're talking about actors and pop stars, people whose expertise lies in entertainment, suddenly positioning themselves as thought leaders. It's like, are we really supposed to take political advice from the guy who played a superhero in a movie last summer? Maher isn't buying it, and honestly, who can blame him?
You know, the usual suspects, I'll call them on the left in the media, is just, you know, again, not looking in the mirror. It did not.
And speaking of games, let's talk bias, shall we? Maher brings out the receipts on how certain media outlets pretty much act like extensions of certain political campaigns. He suggests that they're not exactly neutral. Remember that time when every single one of them seemed to be operating under the assumption that Clinton had the election in the bag? Maher argues that such overconfidence and disconnectedness led to shock and disbelief. And remarkably, no lessons were learned. No humble pie was eaten. Instead, it was more finger-pointing, more blaming everyone except themselves. Maybe, just maybe, that arrogance was part of the problem?
People texted me things like, well, you know, you can't fix stupid. Sorry, that doesn't work with me. Yeah, you're stupid because you're not thinking about the bigger picture. You're not thinking about maybe we did something wrong. Maybe we're not perfect. America dumped you, and they're all like, you don't know what you had.
Now, another thing Maher wants us to think about is the idea of intolerance. Yes, you heard that right. He's targeting the left's claim to be the champions of tolerance and diversity of thought, yet often showing no patience or understanding for those who dare step out of their ideological line. The minute someone disagrees, it's like, oh, you're part of the problem. But how is that helpful? Isn't the whole point of a democratic society to have a bunch of voices, even those you totally cringe at? Because if you only allow one point of view, how different is that from the authoritarianism you claim to be fighting?
Call him Hitler loudly enough.
Or that just a lot of...
And let's not skip the part about the permissibility of discussions, right? You know, that slightly frightening terrain where you're navigating political correctness and walking on eggshells. Maher weighs in on how this culture is making everything so stringent. He's like, what in the world happened to just having an open debate? Turns out people are scared to speak their minds, fearing backlash, or what if, God forbid, they told a joke? So much for free expression, huh? And this isn't just theoretical. People have lost jobs, had their reputations ruined, all because they said something that was fine 10 years ago but now is suddenly off limits. Maher sees this as a cultural crisis.
Yes, they do. They know what they had, and what they're saying is, we know what we had, and you're...
Perhaps one of Maher's most poignant observations revolves around the left's inability or unwillingness to consider opposing views as sometimes valid, just sometimes, right? It's problematic if all you do is point fingers, dismissing all alternative viewpoints as invalid or incompetent. Maher's essentially advocating for some self-reflection. Because maybe, just maybe, there are things worth listening to on the other side, issues that actually matter to millions of Americans. Like, have they ever considered that not every Trump voter is a frothing at the mouth extremist? That maybe some people just had legitimate economic concerns? That maybe not every policy disagreement is a moral failing? From live shows to panel discussions, Maher consistently pricks at these uncomfortable truths. Just think back to when Elon Musk hosted Saturday Night Live. Even before his politics became more noticeable, some cast members were in a tizzy. Isn't it ironic? It's like they had one of the world's most impactful figures right there, but personal bias was too distracting. Imagine that. You have one of the most successful innovators of our time in the room, and instead of engaging with him, you sulk in the corner. Real mature, right? And what about when Maher deftly navigates the panic surrounding Trump? He distinctly separates real concerns from paranoia. Don't get him wrong. He'll call out any damaging policy, but he's urging for rational conversation instead of daily hysteria. Maher's saying if you're worried about Trump dismantling freedom or diving into authoritarian waters, ground those fears in facts, not baseless panic. Can't we all agree that's a sensible approach? Like, if democracy is really under threat, maybe focus on that instead of losing your mind over a mean tweet? At this point, Bill Maher's not asking for miracles or changes overnight. Just a bit more openness and a lot less arrogance. At least, that's how he sees it. And honestly, that doesn't seem like a huge ask, right? But it does require some honest introspection and real conversations across the field. Instead of shutting people down, how about actually listening? Instead of screeching about how the sky is falling every 5 minutes, maybe take a breath and ask, okay, what's actually happening? So what's your take on this? Do you think Maher's got a point, or is he way off? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment and let's keep this conversation alive.